Joining us now to talk about it is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. I have a piece of this story that nobody knows, that you know to be true, and Governor Abbott knows to be true. And that is, I got contact very early in the week from the official meteorologist of my radio show, Joe Bastardi, frequent guest on this program at weatherbell.com. And he sent a note to both of you, to you and Governor Abbott. In that note, he said this is going to be far worse than I think others are predicting. You got in touch with him. The governor got in touch with him. You took it seriously, and you worked hand in hand with the governor in the lead up to this, knowing this was all a big possibility. And this is days before that happened, and you were fully and completely engaged. And I know that from my own reporting and my own conversations with you and Governor Abbott and with Joe Bastardi. Now, you went and you took your daughters to Cancun and you came back. I think you can be a father and be the senator of Texas all at the same time and make a round trip, quick drop-off trip and come home.
Well, Sean, that's right. And starting with what you opened with, you connected me with Joe early on before these storms actually even hit the state of Texas. And I got to say, you called me and told me Joe was very impressive. He knew his stuff. And I called him that evening and spent significant time on the phone with him talking through what he saw coming. And he was predicting not one, but two major winter storms, the combination of which he believed would have an impact on Texas that would exceed anything we've seen in this state since 1899. And I thought it was a very impressive, a very serious. He sent me charts and data on what was coming. And you reached out and I reached out to Governor Abbott and said, listen, this guy knows his stuff and you ought to talk to him. And we helped connect them. And, you know, at the same time, Governor Abbott had already declared an emergency in all 254 counties all across Texas. And so I joined with John Cornyn in urging Joe Biden to declare a federal disaster to mirror the governor's request, which President Biden, to his credit, did. And so that was early on, right before these storms came. We knew they were serious. This week has been hell for the state of Texas. It has been two storms on top of each other. 4 million Texans lost power, no lights, many with no water. It has been frustrating. I'll tell you, Sean, a lot of Texans are mad or pissed off. How can it be that Texas, the energy capital of the world, can't turn our lights on and can't heat our homes? A lot of Texans are frustrated. This shouldn't have happened. I'll tell you, Heidi and me, we lost power for 2 days. Our house was dark. We had no heat. Actually, the fireplace behind me, we were all huddled around the fireplace because it was the only heat in the house. And after a couple of days, after the girls being really cold, it being in the teens and the 20s outside, our girls said, look, school's been canceled for the week. Can we take a trip and go somewhere warm? And Heidi and I, as parents, we said, OK, sure. And so last night I flew down with them to the beach. And then I flew back this afternoon. I had initially planned to stay through the weekend and to work remotely there. But as I was heading down there, I started to have second thoughts almost immediately, because the crisis here in Texas, you need to be here on the ground. And as much as you can do by phone and Zoom, it's not the same as being here. And so I returned this afternoon, and I'm here working to make sure to do everything we can to get the power turned on, but also fundamentally to ask the questions, why did this happen? Why was the Texas grid, which is regulated at the state level, it's operated at the state level, it's not a federal function, it's a state function, but why was the grid not sufficiently prepared so that 4 million Texans lost heat and power? We need to answer that, and we need to make sure it never happens again in the state of Texas.
To what extent? Now, Texas is very unique in that there's no federal control authority over their energy grid. It's separate and apart, which for a lot of different reasons is very good for Texas. As you do not have to abide by the burdensome regulations of the federal government. Very smart on Texas's part, and I think that's brilliant. Well, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I thought we learned during COVID that teleschool, telemedicine, teleworking, Zoom calls, all this other stuff changed the way we do everything. Now, I'm not assuming that the people of Texas thought you were going to go out there with blow torches and antifreeze and get the wind turbines going, but you raise a good question, and that is, with all the natural resources of Texas, why is Texas relying on wind turbines, which, by the way, it's use it or lose it. You can't store that energy. And why, in that sense, isn't it upgraded to what works now? Now, eventually, if it works and Texas chooses that, I'm an all the above guy. But for now, oil, gas, and coal are our main sources of energy, and nuclear energy, if people would let us use it.
Well, I think you said it right, which is that we should use all of the above. In Texas, Texas is the #1 producer of wind energy in the country, more than California. About 25% of our electricity comes from wind, and that's a valuable asset. My view is we ought to be using all the energy sources, but we shouldn't have mandates. We shouldn't be subsidizing any. We should let the market decide and the consumers decide. Right now, we don't have clear answers as to why the Texas energy grid couldn't handle this surge in the winter. Obviously, a massive surge like this is very unusual in Texas. It appears there were a combination of factors. One factor is a substantial number of the wind turbines froze and ceased producing energy. Now, elsewhere, other colder climates, you're able to put treatments and lubricants on wind turbines so they can operate in the cold. But in Texas, that wasn't predicted to happen, and so they didn't do that. We saw a huge drop-off in energy from wind. We also saw substantial drop-offs from coal, substantial drop-offs from natural gas, substantial drop-offs from solar. What we need to do is have a serious fact-based investigation, not based on politics, not based on the Green New Deal and where you are on this policy or the other. It needs to be based on the evidence, based on the facts, to say what happened. Why was the grid not there? Most of these shutdowns were mandated because there wasn't the power, and so they just shut whole neighborhoods down. You know, we had Tuesday night, we had a bunch of kids at our house because our house was one of the few houses that had power, and so we had a lot of our daughter's friends were over. We were making dinner for them, and right about, I don't know, 6:30, boom, the lights go out and we lose power. And so we had a candlelight dinner because that's all we had. We had flashlights, and then the girls all camped out. They got in sleeping bags and wrapped up in comforters and everything. But it got cold. I mean, it was in the 30s in the house as it got cold. And it stayed with no power for 2 days. That was because the power generation in the grid couldn't meet the demands, and so they took whole streets and whole neighborhoods offline. That should not happen again. It certainly shouldn't happen in Texas. You know, other states, you look at a state like California, where they have rolling brownouts predictably year after year after year. It's a failure of the system, and it's a failure the government regulators are causing. Part of the reasons Texans are so pissed is this shouldn't happen in Texas. And I'll tell you this, we're going to fix it. The state of Texas better fix it. Governor Abbott was right when he called on the state legislature to investigate why the grid wasn't ready and to make sure this never happens again in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I didn't see much criticism there early lid that Joe Biden put on things, while the people in Texas, you could use federal help. But there's always that double standard. You made the right call coming back. You also can be a father. There's also something called technology. We also know what teleworking is. And I think there's a lot of sanctimony and politics being played in this attack. And look, Governor Perry made me an honorary Texan. That's why I made the call to you and Governor Abbott. I feel a responsibility for Americans that actually don't hate me, like the state I'm living in, New York. Anyway, welcome home, Senator, and all the best to our friends in Texas, and hopefully we get this fixed soon.